slid right into it. Well, no, I'm actually, go ahead and record. We can always take it out later. Yeah, I'll just practice here. So, also, it's been a deliberate approach on my part to do this from principles. That is the idea of representational theory and correspondence theory and distinction theory, instead of teaching direct applications. Because the work of Roger and Ross is very well delivered and expanded by Shelley Rose Charvet in books and in tapes, and I do recommend you seek those out. There's another fellow over in Belgium who's doing something called Job EQ, and he does over the internet, does the instrument of the meta programs. You work, and you can pronounce his name for me correctly.
Patrick Merlevid.
Merlevid. Yeah. Patrick Merlevid is an asset to NLP. It's too bad I need another word than asset, right? Because it kind of slips there. Patrick Merlevid. Okay, Merlevid is to be treasured. This guy is working with a larger population vis-a-vis the internet, interviewing with some of the instruments of the lab profile and other stuff he's working on, and working on ways to actually turn these qualitative distinctions into quantitative results that businesses will respect.
We are
And
working on a project here on to get the Kuwaiti population strategic planning.
all right. So that too, because with each multiple perspective that you get on this material, with each application, you will thereby deepen your own awareness of it. Another way to approach that, of course, is to be able to repeat what it is you already have. And that would be to listen to tapes, or to, in the case now again, advanced technology, see the videos again. I will tell you from my own experience, when I first studied with David Gordon, he was teaching metaphor. And I got the audio tapes, and I had a pile of audio tapes, and I wasn't listening to it for a couple of years, and I moved, and I found them again, and I put them on, and I'm listening, and I realized he was teaching meta programs in the background. Now, I'm not saying that I'm doing something like that. I am saying, though, that there's so much more there than we know how to account for, that that's another way to deepen your learnings of this. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that with the DVD and CD possibility, that you could also do the Practitioner program. I don't know what your opinion of my skills are, but I'll tell you this. I attended 3 separate practitioners. One of them in Chicago that was originally sponsored by Grinder and then was presented by some other people. One of them that was sponsored by an old hypnotist and his protege, and the NLP comprehensive training under the guidance of Stephen Connie Ray Andreas. When I did my master practitioner, I did 2 official master practitioners, Stephen Connie Ray Andreas' master practitioner, and the one offered by Leslie Cameron Bandler, David Gordon, and others back when it was the Institute of Advanced Studies. These were the same territory, and basically they were a different look. These were completely different programs. And then I took what was the equivalent of another master's just in other workshops, Michael LeBeau's negotiation, David Gordon on metaphor and storytelling, Leslie Cameron Bandler on decision making, and so forth. And I want you to know this is a broad field, and that different people in different schools really bring differences. And if you haven't taken the NLP Comprehensive Practitioner, this is now an opportunity for you to get in touch with that, to experience that, at least vis-a-vis the video, understanding, of course, that the brain doesn't know if you put a little black line around it, it's not real. So you'll still get the mirror neuron activation. Something to keep in mind. We will touch upon this today. The changing of meta programs. And we will visit it again, as I say, because we have the room to do so. You'll notice there's a word from another section, submodalities up here. Because one of the ways, well, first of all, you don't change meta programs. I hope that's abundantly. Meta programs are a domain of experience that you have. And you can expand that domain of experience. You can go from simply being self a little other to really expand your capacity to step into other. You can go from self to observer. You can really expand your capacity to be an observer. And some of the advanced work I'm doing in terms of what do high-level business consultants do, what do business managers who are practicing what's known as fifth-level leadership do. They have ways of abstracting that are different than the ways people ordinarily abstract. They have a very rich and specifically developed observer capacity. It's not just jump out and go back in. These are each worlds upon worlds, as are the other metaprogram distinctions. So knowing that, what you can do is increase the submodalities in a particular metaprogram distinction, and that will do what? Enrich that possibility for you. Yes. A more direct way to do that is to develop what are known as reference experiences, which is a fancy phrase for go out and play. What I do with clients when we finish a sentence, what I do with clients when I finish a session is, I could do it every sentence too, but no, what I do with clients when I finish a session is I very often send them out in search of pleasure. Couple of reasons for this. One is that when people are in difficulties, they reduce their sensory awareness and are very often more internal, playing the same sorts of things. And I work with adults. By then, people have their habits. They think they know what they like, and they think they know what they don't like. You know, it was like George Bush Sr. saying he didn't like broccoli. And they asked him, when was the last time he tried it? And he said it was 25 years ago. And I thought to myself, you know, I'm more experimental than that. Well, to put it in the friendly terms, you can ask your client, if you notice that they're not getting enough sensory awareness, you can say, I want you to go out and find something that feels really good to touch. Now, if they happen to live in the countryside, that could be whether it was, you know, bark or a leaf or something like that. If you're in the city, it's like it would be going to a department store and feeling silk and linen. Now, that may sound kind of weird, but it could also be like developing your auditory. Go to a music shop and find a new music that you like. Now, that's going to require them to listen, go external. It's going to require that they are listening for what they like, as opposed to noticing what they don't like, and to compare till they find something they really like. And it gets the person back in touch with their sensory experiences. In the very same analog way, people that are very attracted to people can be encouraged to expand that by having activities with people. Now, you find this in certain self-help books. They say, well, get an exercise buddy. We now can appreciate what that means in metaprograms. If somebody is more people-oriented, then having an exercise buddy, then you have somebody there to distract you from the fact that you're moving your body, right? Another way to go about it is to have them engage in activities that would be pleasurable. See, even the most non-thing-oriented person likes certain things. It might be they like their shirts to be soft. It might be that they like old books. It might be that they like old cars or something. And in some way, they got a little bit of that pleasure going about things. And they can begin to expand that awareness. Same thing about information. You know, they're talking about getting kids to want to read. That's easy. Give them something they want to read. Start there. My friend's daughter, she just like burns through all these books. And most of them I look and I go, boy, that's trash. And she goes, yeah, you'll think this is trash. So every once in a while, I'll slip in like a Huckleberry Finn. I said, try this, see if you like it. And then she goes, yeah, it wasn't that bad. You know, and let her go on for a while. And then I go, you know, I got this one too. I got Wind in the Willows. And she goes, yeah, it was pretty good. And we play this little game because she already knows that she likes to read certain kind of stuff. And so you begin to take people where they are and expand that awareness. In other words, you build reference experiences. If you want to find out more about this, Leslie has it in her book, co-authored with Michael LeBeau, called Know-How. We also talked about shifting thresholds, moving the threshold of an away from or a toward. Sometimes that's as easy as just deciding that you're not going to take as much pain, that you're not going to need to be hit by a 2x4 before you decide to do something. Sometimes you want to do what we do in NLP. You want to scope, and Ron talked about this earlier, about taking up boxing and then having it end in a certain place and deciding he didn't want to take that path. You have the person project a future of continuing to have heartburn and continuing to be more and more debilitated by it. And then they go, enough. Of course, they went over a threshold to create a new threshold that says, I don't feel that much pain. I can get a signal. I can pay attention. When the telephone's ringing, you pick it up. You don't pick it up better if it rings louder. If you can hear it, that's enough. Another way is by criteria. If someone, for instance, doesn't know enough about things, that also means they don't have enough criteria about things. Now for me, this was more about sports years back. One of my friends in college sat me down and we watched a baseball game together. And I was amazed. I understood at that point why the Japanese liked baseball so much. Because it was like these two sides, and they had the warrior out there with the samurai sword, the bat, and they had the pitcher and all these people. And he explained to me, and he gave me distinctions that I began to have more criteria about how that worked. And of course, we do that about what we care about. We do that when we begin to enjoy good food, good wine. We begin to realize, there's more things, distinctions to realize and appreciate. When we get a car, and then somebody lends us a nice car, or they get us at a shop and we're going in the dealership and we get in the really nice car and you're going, I'm getting too many distinctions now. The criteria is rising. Still, that's something you can utilize in other areas of your life to expand the other meta programs. You can use hierarchy of criteria to make something more important, submodalities. You can increase the intensity of those different experiences. And these are just the beginning. We will be revisiting this material in more depth and detail, giving you an opportunity, therefore, to try out stuff, to wonder about it, and bring me your questions, your observations, your discoveries, and yourselves. I'd like to offer you, in the passage we have from this section to the next, in which you're going to study about beliefs, your beliefs and others, and how they're made and how they're changed, a story from one of my favorite authors, Jorge Luis Borges. It actually is the book that I read in college when I studied with him. And one of the stories he wrote many years ago was about a lottery in Babylon. And he says, I, like all men in Babylon, have been the proconsul, and I have been a slave. He says, I have known omnipotence, and I have known imprisonment. And then he goes on to say, look, here in my cloak, you see a mark. And on certain days of the month, I'm invisible and may go about and do as I please. And yet, in other times of the year, I must be banned from my own country. And he begins to tell the story about how in his country, he participates in a lottery. And that the lottery started out much like lotteries in any other country. In fact, it was run by the barbers. The barber shops would sell tokens for money, and then the person who had the winning token would win the money, or a large percent, and the barber would keep some. And while they got to be popular enough that the city engaged in it, there really wasn't much success with it. And then someone got the idea of putting in some negative markers so that you might pull a winning ticket or you might pull a losing ticket. And if you pulled a losing ticket, well, then you had to pay a fine. And curiously enough, the lottery became much more popular because people felt there was something as risk. And as the author, the person from Babylon describes it, he said, now there was a moral dimension to the lottery. Well, such was the popularity that they actually increased the number of losing tickets. And also they found that people were not willing to pay the fines. So it was agreed by the city you'd be imprisoned for so many days if you didn't pay the fines. But you'd get the money if you won. Well, people were thinking about this, and they quickly realized that, in fact, you're only getting the money to get chances to do something else, an opportunity to buy something or be somewhere or pretend you're someone. They said, why don't we have the winning tickets that you actually win a position in the society? Or perhaps you lose position in the society. Perhaps you come home and you discover you have a new household, a new mate. Or perhaps you don't have a home anymore. And as they elaborated the possibilities, more and more people wanted to buy the tickets. And the lower classes, feeling excluded from it, there was a rebellion in the society. And it was only finally made peace when it was decided the whole society would participate in the lottery. And so he goes on in this way and describes how they would change their jobs and their places, and that because of this, he had been in all these different parts of life. He'd seen it at the top and he'd seen it at the bottom. And he'd been a manual laborer, and he'd been somebody who was a thinker and designer of the future of his society. And he closes it by saying that he really doesn't know how long this has been going on and whether anyone can find anyone from the company of the lottery now. But he says, I pity you who grow up in another society where you know who you are and you know what role you have and you know what role you will be and what you get to do and so forth, and that you don't live in Babylon. And my answer to him over these many years is that when you leave tonight and you go back to where you're staying, is to reach in your pocket or maybe in your purse, and if you find some old tickets, to take them out and put them on the dresser there. And next time you come back to this place, bring them with you, because the next man you meet up here will help you to exchange those tickets for ones closer to your heart's desire. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.